Welcome back to the Wrestling with Story podcast and what happened for July 9th, 2024. This is the Raw rundown. I wanted to go through what happened on Raw. Fantastic episode. Really enjoyed it. The big overall headline, not to spoil it for you guys, but Rhea Ripley returned. How amazing was that? Really, I would say, they played their hand a little too hard throughout the episode. Like, it seemed pretty clear that the end of the episode was going to be that Rhea walks in. It's a little bit of the, you're going to find the cheating husband. It reminded me a bit of, this is going to be a weird reference. It reminded me a little bit of Sliding Doors. You're just waiting for that husband to show up. If you watch Sliding Doors, it's brutal. It's really a brutal movie. It's not the wackadoo, fun, romantic comedy we all remember. Anyways, but yeah, like, aside from it being played a little too broadly, I think it was really, like, what a great moment. Really well played, really fun, really well earned. And I can't wait to see what the repercussions are of it, which is, the argument of, you always want to have a great ending because that great ending makes you want to come back for more. And sure enough, I can't wait to see what happens next. That story, I have talked about it at length. There's another video I made a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago now, about how that is my favorite story that's on TV right now. That and the other love story that was going on at the time over in AEW. And so I'm going to link to that video. It'll be in the show notes and it'll be up over in the corner if you're watching this video over on YouTube. And if you're not, you can be over on YouTube or so check the show notes or otherwise. Anyways, I'm going to do match by match. I'm going to try and go through it quick for you, and I'll talk about it, doing what I do. In case you don't know, I probably should have said this up front, but I'm Joshua Hale Fialkov. I am a writer and producer of television, graphic novels, animation, video games. I do a little bit of everything. New York Times bestselling author, I've heard. That's what I tell my mom anyways. And I like to talk about wrestling from the point of view of story and storytelling. And that's how I'm going to talk about Monday Night Raw. And here we go. So we open with this fantastic segment with CM Punk and Seth Rollins. Just, what opens is CM Punk coming out and essentially demanding from general manager Adam Pearce that Drew McIntyre, who was suspended over the weekend, is reinstated. He claims that it's not fair, that he's come back for his pound of flesh, and he now wants that flesh. And, he goes on and on about how, this is not, this is what he has worked for. And he's now that he can finally get ready to face Drew's not there. Which, as I say it out loud, is a little complicated, and I'll get into why shortly. When he calls for Pearce to come out, instead he gets Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins comes out. Here's what's crazy: every time CM Punk isn't even there. Forget him coming out. Just anytime CM Punk is like invoked through theory, like not even brought up, people go crazy for CM Punk. They're chanting his name. They're overwhelming any conversation that's being had. And yet, Seth Rollins got a gigantic pop. People, they just sing that song and they keep going. Punk was acting like a petulant little child about it because he doesn't like how long it takes, which, to be fair, he's not wrong. But Seth Rollins came out to a huge pop. And then Seth Rollins proceeded to cut an amazing promo. And the thing about this promo, this is what I took away from it, is he told the truth. What he talked about how Punk makes himself the center of every story. How Punk got involved in the World Championship match because he thought he was the center of that story. How Punk gets involved because Punk always sees himself as the middle of everything. And the thing is that is not just true in the stories they tell, but that's true in Punk's personal life too, that's actually a thing that Punk is a known truth of the reality of Punk. That is a shoot fact. And it's one of the things that that Seth Rollins has said about Punk outside of the ring. Like, he has gone on the record in real life to say that. What I'm talking about here is called neo-kayfabe, right? It's this idea of blending the lie of professional wrestling with the reality of the world outside. And you don't know what part of it is actually real and which part of it is actually the show. Because it's really real. Like, it's really true. It's part of what made this thing so compelling. And I think it's part of why the audience stayed on Rollins' side, because the fact is they know it's true. So how do you argue with it, you know? The climax of this thing is sort of my favorite part. Punk tries to explain to Rollins the reason why he had to get involved, and it's this thing that people do who don't have kids. And so I'm guessing that whoever helped put together this promo has the same. either Punk was like, "Let me pitch this to you," and explained it, and the person was like, yeah, that makes you sound great. Or when they came up with it, they were like, there's this thing that people do that drives me insane. Because there's this thing that people do that drives me insane. So Punk is explaining how he had to go after Drew because Drew was walking around, and he said to Seth, like, imagine if Drew was walking around and he had your wife and child's name in his mouth. And Seth is like, you're right, that would drive me crazy. And then Punk's response was, well, he had my wife and my dog's name in his mouth. That he doesn't know the difference between, like, a child and a dog, and that he groups them together is such a, like, subtle, like, yeah, just a nice little, like, little knife in the side, which I think is, like, again, it's that, like, he doesn't understand there's a difference. He doesn't understand that he's not the center of the world. It's just another one of those little layers that gets added on. And again, it's something that if you have kids and you have friends who don't, but do have pets, they say things like that to you, and it's mind blowing. And if you just have pets, they are probably just as good as your kids, as my kids. I bet you probably love them just as much. I bet. I can't wait to hear about this in the comments. Please let me know. Let me know all about it. But yeah, again, like, I think part of why this promo works, and like, I would argue that maybe for the first time in Punk's time since he returned, Punk lost this promo off and to Rollins. And I genuinely believe that that's because Rollins told the truth. And, I did a video about a week ago, I think, about the power of truth and how truth is what actually doesn't just set us free. It actually drives all good story. And I'll make sure that there is a link in the show notes, and it'll be up in the corner for you if you want to click on it and take a look. So yeah, we came out of that and we got this amazing segment with Dominick, Mysterio, and Pearce backstage, where Dominick is begging Adam Pearce, the general manager, to not make him go through with his match tonight, which is a intergender match with Liv Morgan on his team versus his father, Rey Mysterio, and Zelina Vega. And he's begging, and Pearce is like, but Liv asked for it, so of course we're going to do it. And then Liv comes out and embarrasses Dominick, who gets all blushy and says, like, we should go plan our strategy. It's a really cute segment. Again, I love this story to death. I think this story is one of the best things on wrestling TV right now. It's really, really fun and really, really great television. And I did a whole long segment about this too, which I will link to in the show notes and up in the corner. From there, we go to a Chad Gable Jey Uso match. It's a decent match, did not set the world on fire, and was interrupted by the Wyatt Six. They are back, ladies and gentlemen. They are back once again. Abby the Witch came out. The real highlight of the entire segment was Jey Uso. He just looks at the crowd, goes, yeet, and then whoop, does like a Scooby-Doo, like you could hear his Flintstone feet as he ran out, which is pretty delightful. And then Chad Gable does his like panicked runaway. And what I liked was that Abby the Witch did not seem to care about Chad Gable. Like, he's now conflating the whole thing in his own mind is what it feels like they're doing, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. That's a good way to take it. She delivers another videotape in another box to Pat McAfee and Michael Cole. What they did that I think is interesting is they sort of played it off like more of a joke this time. They were certainly less scared. They were just sort of like, ugh, if almost all the way to like irritated. And then immediately after she disappeared, they cut to the backstage area where there was where Seamus was getting interviewed, and Seamus was like, "Oh, that was weird," and he just sort of like, he really minimized it, which is in character for him, but it might make him look cool, but it makes them look weak, and that isn't like, I don't need Sheamus to look cool. Sheamus has been doing this. I mean, the promo was about how he's been doing it for 15 years or 20 years or however long, so like, he's good. We don't need to build him up anymore. Anyways, Sheamus's promo gets interrupted by Bronson Reed, who is going to have a match with Pete Dunne. And they reestablish in this promo, the whole point of it really is to establish that Sheamus and Pete Dunne used to be friends when Pete Dunne had a different name. When Pete Dunne was Butch. Okay, so let's talk about the weirdness that is professional wrestling in the world of Vince McMahon. So Pete Dunne was an independent wrestler, right? In the UK. He's a low guy, so that's immediately a problem for Vince McMahon. But he's amazing. So he somehow got into NXT UK, and then I believe he made it all the way to NXT US, and was a pretty big star. Like, he was pretty over as Pete Dunne. Did really well. He was a world champion. He had amazing matches. Like, the guy's just sensational. Like, what a talent Pete Dunne is. And he's got a great gimmick. Like, just a great gimmick. And then it's time for him to move to the main roster. And Vince McMahon apparently looked at him and said, "Now your name is Butch." And they just changed his name. And they made him into a different character. And he became one of the Brawling Brutes. And he didn't talk. And he was just a different guy. And we all just pretended he was a different guy. Because wrestling. And then, Vince is gone. And the Brawling Brutes broke up. And they tried to keep him Butch. And they tried to do stuff with Butch. And it just didn't work. There just wasn't anything to do. And they finally realized, like, why is he not Pete Dunne? Because that's stupid. So they made him into Pete Dunne again. And he's been, like, more over as Pete Dunne, I think. And it's nice to have him back. He's a badass. He's fantastic in the ring. He's so fun to watch. I think he's got, for a guy who doesn't talk much, like, he's got a lot of character. He's got a lot of personality. It certainly comes out in his matches. But, so now, in the present, he has this match with Bronson Reed, which I think is possibly like one of the best matches Bronson Reed's had in a really long time. But Bronson Reed trounces him and then goes to beat him up again, and Sheamus comes in and does a run-in to save Pete Dunne, and at the end he gives Pete Dunne like a "hey little buddy" hug, as though he is still Butch. But Pete Dunne is not Butch. Pete Dunne is now Pete Dunne. Because wrestling. Right? Because wrestling. And so Pete Dunne is like, "Oh, get off me." And he pushes Sheamus away, and Sheamus is like, "What's going on?" Because like us, we're also like, what is going on? That's the same guy. He just now has a different name for no reason. And so apparently we're going to get some kind of angle that is the two of them. That is Sheamus and Pete Dunne / Butch, which is delightful. So I'm on board because it's going to be good matches. Like, we're gonna get some bangers out of it, and as we know, Sheamus's thing is banger after banger after banger after banger. So cool. Who could ask for anything more? Then what do we get? Oh, we had Damian Priest is what we had. Damian Priest and the Judgment Day are just standing around in the hallway like they do, and Seth Rollins comes up, and they did something really interesting here. Seth Rollins talked about the botch. If you don't know about the botch, there was over the weekend at Money in the Bank, there was a pin that the referee pretended Priest kicked out of, even though Priest did not. Priest got knocked silly and should have kicked out and didn't. And the whole match got really weird for about 5 seconds. And I did actually same thing, not to keep pushing you guys to go watch other videos, but you should go watch this other video I made a whole video about it, link in the corner and in the show notes. And you can you probably could have just ridden right past it, but I think it was nice. Like, it was a nice nod to it. Rollins essentially said, like, hey man, you got lucky, like, bad call, you got lucky, moved right past it. And then Priest agrees to call off their gentleman's agreement that Rollins could not challenge for the world title anymore, which seems anti-climactic or anti-logical at the very least. Like, it was sort of the stakes of the match, so getting rid of those stakes doesn't help anything. And there's a promo later on in the episode where Priest talks about how he gets his wins the way he gets his wins, and he doesn't care that he gets his wins, through slightly nefarious means, because he's just doing what he's doing. This actually counteracts that, right? Because he's like, he shouldn't care enough to, like, give the guy another chance. Like, what is it? There's no benefit to him. So I don't really get it. It's a weird choice, I would say. We go off of that to Sami Zayn in the ring, where he talks about the amazing match that he had over the weekend with Bron Breakker, which was indeed an amazing match. And as he's going on about how he's not an underdog and he can kick anyone's butt and he needs to be stopped treated like an underdog, Bron Breakker comes out and shows him respect, which is, of course, like code for he's about to spear Sami Zayn. And sure enough, he spears Sami Zayn and then just kicks the living crap out of him. And as he's beating the crap out of him, and it's delightful, just really, because God, does Sami Zayn take a beating well. That man just knows how to get the crap kicked out of him. So as Sami's taking a beating, Ilya Dragunov comes out and makes the save, except Bron Breakker kicks the crap out of him too. As the two of them go at it, everything gets broken up, and we go into a pretty pedestrian match between the Awesome Truth and Braun Strowman versus the Judgment Day that has been sort of brewing and milling about for a while. And I got nothing to say about it. Sorry. I wish I did, but it was fine, I guess. The Judgment Day won. Hooray. Then we went to a bit where Punk was with Adam Pearce, and in case you haven't noticed already, what an Adam Pearce heavy episode. We really have spent an inordinate amount of time with Adam Pearce for being the general manager. Like, he is a main focal point of this episode. A lot of it is because this is an episode where everything is starting to grind up and get into place for SummerSlam. Which is sort of our mid-season finale. If you look at the entire year of WWE programming as, WrestleMania as the season finale, SummerSlam is sort of the midpoint, right? Or like the mid-season finale, as if this was a Netflix show, as it will soon be. So, it sort of makes sense because now we're starting to like put our pieces in place for what's going to be, the big climax. But so CM Punk essentially is going on about how he needs to bring back Drew McIntyre, and Pearce makes a deal with them, which is he'll bring back Drew McIntyre, but CM Punk needs to go take a break because CM Punk is not healed. So CM Punk, what does he care if Drew McIntyre comes back? Like, doesn't having Drew McIntyre suspended, isn't that better for Punk? Because that is just continuing to punish Drew McIntyre. He's suspended, and theoretically suspended without pay, one would think, I would hope. I mean, he did assault a guy. So it seems weird to me that Punk is like, no, bring him back. Please, bring him back. But, that's sort of how that gets left. Weird. It was, again, a little bit weird. And then we get another delightful Liv and Dom scene where Liv offers to give Dom a massage in the crotchal region. And he's very hesitant until she does it, and which point he gets really into it. And then the Judgment Day do a remarkably silly entrance with their heads popping around corners, And it's literally like popping, really, really silly stuff. And Carlito makes a dirty joke, but really cute. And they have this funny bit where Priest makes, Priest essentially criticizes him for it, and Dominick's response is like, "You're not my dad," setting up that things are going to go badly. Things are going badly for him. Also, throughout, we've now seen, this is, I think, the second time that Priest makes a reference to it. The first time is right after that Priest-Rollins bit. Priest gets a phone call, and we see him when he gets the phone call being like, "Oh, you're here? Oh, that's going to be great. I can't wait to see you." So we're like, uh-huh. And then in this bit, he says to, I think, Finn Balor something along the lines of like, "Oh, I'm not going to tell him. He'll find out soon enough." So like, obviously we're like, oh, Rhea's coming back. We're 100% sure by then that we know that Rhea's coming back. So after our little Judgment Day segment, which again, it might sound like I'm minimizing it, but it was actually delightful. We get our Uncle Howdy video number 2. This one, interestingly, I feel like it wasn't getting a lot of play online. And I find it interesting because I thought it was actually one of the more interesting, better ones. For one very concrete reason. We saw all of them with their masks off. And now, like, we know who they are, so that's not the reason why. What it actually does is it's telling us that they are going to wrestle without them. That we're not talking about masked wrestlers. We're talking about them as, like, they're going to wrestle as themselves. And that's a big deal because the idea of them wrestling as the characters is very unappealing. It's gonna be, that means if they're wrestling as the characters, they're wrestling as these, like, semi-supernatural entities. If they're wrestling as themselves and they wear these costumes as the characters, then we're talking about them wrestling as people. And that's much more grounded. It's much more realistic. Like, all of it makes more sense. And it makes much more, it makes more sense in the world that the WWE is existing in now. As opposed to, like, what they were doing during the pandemic with the Bray Wyatt stuff then, and The Fiend and all of that stuff. So I feel like it was actually pretty positive and pretty useful. So I'm a fan. I think it was a really strong choice to do it that way. After that stuff, we then have a segment with Chad Gable approaching Adam Pearce, because again, we just can't get enough Adam Pearce this episode. As he goes to Adam Pearce, he is complaining that clearly the video was about him. The Wyatt 6 video was about him, and he has to, like, someone has to protect him. It really, like, delightful. I love, because again, like, it's being played. Chad is sort of now making it about himself, and, like, it doesn't feel like it is. Like, nothing in that video seemed to be about Chad Gable, but Chad Gable is so egocentric that he's now convinced everything is about him. Pearce tries to kind of play it off. As Pearce goes into his office, he opens the door, and who is sitting inside there but Taylor Rotunda himself, Uncle Howdy, without the costume, which again says a couple things. Number one, it's that we're going to get the guys. We're not going to get the costumes, which I think is a good thing. And number two, it says we're probably only a couple weeks away from them actually making an in-ring debut, which I think is another good thing because it's time. Next, we got, that's all there is. And there is no more segment after that. It goes to commercial after that. Then we had Damage Control coming out to talk about how they're going to run roughshod over Raw, which is just what they do now. They just cut promos and then don't actually do anything. I love Io Sky a lot. She's like my absolute favorite, one of my absolute favorite wrestlers. But I feel like since losing Asuka to injury and then losing Bayley in a bigger sense because of story, I feel like Damage Control has lost a lot of its purpose and a lot of its grounding, and they haven't quite figured out what to do with them since that storyline. So, you know, I don't have a lot of hope for what they're going to do. And then what happens in a few minutes when I get to it is going to show you why. Then we got a Dragunov and Bron Breaker match that was pretty bubbling. It was real good. What's interesting about these matches that I really like is, you know, they make it a 50-50, right? So it feels like it could go either way. even though it's going to go for Bron. Like, we kind of know it's going to go for Bron. But they give Dragunov two things. Number one, he feels like an underdog, so you're rooting for him. But it actually feels possible. Like, it does genuinely feel like there is a chance he could win. And that's a neat trick, and it makes him continue to feel like a hero, even though he's getting his ass handed to him. But yes, it was a really solid match that Dragunov lost. Then we got this Damian Priest package that I mentioned earlier, where he talks about how he's a hero, and he's like, or not that he's a hero, because he's not a hero. He talks about how he won the way that he won, and it doesn't bother him, and that he's got a lot of there's a lot of champions around the WWE who take their wins how they get them, and it doesn't bother them, so why the hell should it bother him? All of which is that the subtext of that is that, man, does it bother him that he keeps getting these shitty wins instead of getting honest, good wins, which is a nice way to, like, slowly, again, keep sort of pushing him towards that face turn that he's, like, totally on his way to. So yeah, really good. I really like a nice package. These packages are interesting. This is the second one that I can remember in recent times. They did one for Solo Sikoa as well, where I think what they are is, you have guys who are not cutting fantastic promos, but who the WWE really believes in. And so what they're doing is they are essentially giving them polished promo time that are put together, edited, and made slick so that they can essentially make them look as good as WWE feels about them. And it really worked for Solo Sikoa. It really made a big difference, I think, for Solo Sikoa. I hope it makes a big difference for Priest. I think it's a good move for Priest. Up next, we had Damage Control versus Lyra, Valkyria, Carter, and Chace. It was a fine match. It got ruined by a run-in by Sonya Deville, Zoe Stark, and Shayna Baszler, who then went after Damage Control because of how Io Sky went after Zoe Stark at the pay-per-view or PLE over the weekend. Then the three of them, Deville, Stark, and Baszler, had a run-in with the new women's tag team champs. It was a little bit of a nothing segment for both matches, I think. Not great. Doesn't feel like it. I wish there was more to it. I wish there was more to talk about, but there kind of isn't. Then we got to our main event. Our main event was Liv Morgan and Dominic Mysterio versus Rey Mysterio and Zelina Vega. I just want to say Zelina Vega is a goddamn star. She's amazing in the ring. She's great on the stick, and she is amazing looking. Like, she's got a great look to her. She's kind of the total package. And, I think for whatever reason, like, they gave her the push when they made her Queen of the Ring, but then they never capitalized on it. And I felt like they were going to capitalize on it. However, as we know, this match is at the end of this match, after she loses to Liv and Dom, it is, of course, interrupted by the return of Rhea Ripley. And so I have a feeling that push for Zelina is going to get shoved off to the side. So yeah, the way the match ends, Liv ends up with Dom on top of her, and Dom finally gives in, and he's about to go in for a kiss when Rhea Ripley's music hits. And of course, in that moment, Liv freaks out and runs like hell. Dom freaks out and immediately runs to Rhea to try and, like, calm her down and explain, like, what was happening and how he didn't do anything and nothing was going to happen. And really, like, a powerful, fun, just like the audience pop was huge. My pop watching it at home was huge. Like, what a great way to end the show. Like, it really made sure that I want to be there next week, and that's all that matters. Like, that is the goal. The goal is to make sure that I as a viewer know that there's a reason to come back. And my God, is there a reason to come back? Because I want to know what happens with this story. And that is Raw for July 8th, 2024. I'm going to put a link to the video I made about their love story. That'll be up here right next to me. I think it's on one of these sides. Right also next to me is going to be a subscribe link. So you can subscribe to this on YouTube. You can also subscribe to the podcast version of this over on Spotify, on iTunes, or anywhere that you get finer podcasts. Please support. I really do love it if you would support, if you could rate, if you could review, if you could thumbs up, if you could do whatever sort of positive things you can do and share with your friends. I love doing this. It is my favorite thing that I've ever done. I would love to do it for, a living. But in order to do that, I need your support. And the way that you can support me right now is by telling people about it and helping to share it and listening and doing all that stuff and watching. So please do that. I really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you next time. I'll see you on Wednesday after Dynamite. We'll see you then. Thank you so much. Wrestling Forever. Peace.